now hop into the battle gameplay section. So this is a diagram of the different elements in Chaos Zero Nightmare. They'll be breaking it down. Slay the Star style card playing, like I said, very Slay the Spire styled with the card battler system. So we'll quickly go over the screenshot. So obviously, this is your health bar for your team. This is the individual sanity meter, which we'll see better in a picture down below, but each character has its own sanity. This is a combo count, not sure like what that specifically means or does. This is a damage indicator, probably shows like how much damage you did per hit, I would imagine. Cards and discard, obviously if you have a card that when used, gets discarded, it would go there. There's a cards played this turn right next to it, that +1. And then there's a graveyard, which is the discard pile, which is all these are combined together to be thrown into the graveyard pile, if I read that correctly. This is your proto skills. I'm going to be honest, I'm not exactly sure what proto skills are. I don't remember reading it in this article, but we'll see. This is obviously like your end turn button. You got enemy action count, which we'll talk about later. Enemy intent, which is potentially like what attack / skill / upgrade they will do. And then enemy weakness attribute, which is right here next to the action count and the intent. Enemy HP, and then there's a toughness gauge, which is essentially like the break gauge from other games. This is your AP, which like here, this one costs 2. This is essentially just how much energy you have per turn. Here's your ego points, which is the EP you use to activate the ego skills, which this one costs 4, 4, and 5. So you need 4 for these two and 5 ego points for this one. And then this is the draw pile, which again we'll talk about more later, but essentially this is all the cards of all your characters combined into the draw pile, and this is just what your hand gets dealt per turn. So yeah, so let's get into this right here. You draw 5 cards from the draw pile at the start of each turn and gain 3 AP. The draw pile consists of 3 combatants cards. So again, I'm yawning. So again, this draw pile right here is consists of, if I were to do the math and if it's adding up properly, it would be the 4 cards and the 4 starter and the 4 unique cards combined for 8 times your 3 characters, which would be like a 24 pile of cards at the start before your hand is obviously dealt the 5. Again, there might be more numbers and more cards that I just don't know about, but if I go off of basically what I've seen so far, that's kind of how I would imagine. So this is where it gets kind of interesting. Your remaining AP for the turn is displayed at the bottom. You can end your turn with the button at the bottom right. When you play a card, you drag it from the bottom of the screen. If it requires targeting, you select which monster to target. So you just grab it, pull, and then the targeting might be either you pull it over, like hover over, or you pull it up and then you got to select afterwards. But either way, there are targeting specific cards, which is good to know. There's AoE and target specific. After the card is played, it goes into the cards played section, which would be right here, this +1 of the discard pile. If you draw more cards during the turn, but there aren't enough in the draw pile, all cards in the discard pile, so all the cards in here, except the cards played this turn, are shuffled back in. So let's say you have 2 cards here. Those 2 cards will not be added into the discard pile. That will be then shuffled into draw pile if you run out of draw pile. They'll still be here. And then when you end turn, those 2 will be added to the now empty discard pile, and your draw pile will be like, 20, cards or whatever the number happens to be of what you have in your hand / what was played so far when you run out of drawable cards. This is one of the main differences, I guess, of Slay the Spire, where Slay the Spire doesn't shuffle your used cards. It just, if you run out of cards, you run out of cards. Obviously, you can't really do that for these type of games because, some enemies are very chunky and only having 20 cards is not going to work very well. At the end of the turn, all cards left in your hand and all cards played are added to the discard pile. So this is interesting. So this means that if you guys have played Reverse 1999, you can't hold on to cards to make them stronger or build up more bursty kind of like hands, because all those cards are then added into the discard immediately when you end turn. Anything in your hand is gone. The only cards that stay are cards that have the retain, I guess you can say, buff / skill attached to it. If it has retain, then it does stay in your hand. Otherwise, like if all these 4 didn't have retain, they would all disappear, go into probably the cards in discard, and then after that, after potentially, your draw pile not having any cards left, it would then maybe shuffle the graveyard, and then full end turn, it would add those cards into the graveyard after that, including these 4. Like if you didn't use these 4 at all, doesn't matter. You're not keeping them. They're going into the discard. So the team health bar and stress bars. I think I pulled this up. I did not. It's okay. So basically, this, I believe, is the stress bar right here. Right here and right here. I believe that's the stress bar. This is like in a fight. I would imagine this is like the pause menu, or at least the like battle overview menu. Hey, excuse me, I'm sorry. Where you basically see like, what characters, do you have? Like here you can see like their equipment, which is separate from partners, which are more so the weapons. This is just kind of potentially just like stat buffs rather than like in passive buffs. This is probably just purely for classes. Like if you want more of like a speed, you probably have to get ones with speed stats, blah blah blah. And then also you can probably see the enemies, I would imagine, through this screen, and you can see like debuffs, probably stats, that kind of thing. You can have 3 combatants and 3 partners per battle. Only combatants will appear in battle. The partners are kind of just like there in the background. The team's HP is shown as a collective bar, which is interesting because we will talk about that later. Which means you can only get wiped out as a squad. So you won't ever have a time where like a character dies before the rest of the team. Like that just doesn't seem to be a thing that will happen, which I guess is good, but also kind of bad, because then that means like, your tankier characters that do taunt potentially, it's not going to matter unless they specifically have like, I guess you could say like damage reduction on hit, because then that means that their hits would be eating less damage than it would be on an attacker. But we'll have to see, once full game comes out, what everyone's kits and, what kind of skills that everyone has. But they all each have their individual stress meter, which is completely separate. So here we go. Here's the other important part of this. So stress increases when characters take damage, and it also naturally goes up at the end of the turn. So it's just a constant build-up debuff, I guess you can say. The more damage a character takes, the more stress they get. So yep, just basically straight up debuff. When a combatant's stress fills up completely, they suffer a breakdown. The team's HP bar immediately loses max HP equal to that combatant's HP stat. So if you were to hypothetically say that each character had equally equally as much HP as each other, that would be 1/3. So if you were to go into breakdown, and let's say you didn't take any damage, you would then be at 2/3 of your max HP immediately. 2/3 of like your max HP would then become your max HP immediately. So your health would drop down, equivalently. So let's say you had, 10 damage dealt to you at, your max HP. Then when it drops down to 2/3, then it would probably equate it to what you lost originally. You would just keep that flat 10 damage, and then you would just, obviously have a lower max HP. But your team shares it. So like right here. So this screen right here, this looks like this girl is now in a breakdown stat. Like right here, it shows that she's currently full on her stress level. These two still have quite a bit to go. But as you can see, this part is red. So I would imagine this is probably her HP stat minus the max HP. And then this is now becomes your current breakdown max HP, which is 157. So they hadn't taken any damage, but her HP is now just 157 flat. It can't go any higher until the character gets out of breakdown. So when a combatant meter fills their breakdown, during a breakdown, all of the combatants' cards are replaced with breakdown cards. So whatever cards you had for this character are now gone, and they're replaced with that character's breakdown cards, which they have 3 of the same here. I don't know if that's just like, I guess you could say like a programmer bug that they, didn't happen to go through and fix, but I would imagine there's got to be more than just one breakdown card. But either way, your character goes into breakdown, and then all their cards now are breakdown cards. You cannot use any other cards but breakdown cards from your character. And they cannot cast any ego skills while in breakdown either, so this character would not be able to cast this right here. Wouldn't be able to cast their ego skill, even if they could. Let's just say they had 5 ego points. They would not be able to cast their ego skill because they're currently in breakdown. Breakdown cards do not cost AP though, but they count against your 5-card draw per turn. So you will draw them, and it will count as a card drawn, but they don't cost any AP. They're obviously not great cards. They might have their niche, benefits and bonuses, and maybe like you can work around like maybe like a certain breakdown debuff helps you out as a player, and then you can deal more damage. But either way, they don't cost AP, and you only get 5 cards a turn, and these count in the number for your 5 cards. If you happen to play 5 of a character's breakdown cards, so if they were to play these 3 and then 2 more, they will recover from breakdown. The team's max HP goes back up to its original, so this 157 would then pop up to here, where the green should be. And then, but its current HP is only healed for half that character's HP stat. So let's say you lost like a good chunk of your health. You would then only get healed no, okay, sorry. So the max HP goes back up. So this bar would then be all the way here, no red. But the 157 that you were at because of the breakdown, you would only gain half of the character's HP that was in breakdown. So basically, from where you're at and where it, the max HP was, you would gain half of that back when you get out of breakdown. So that's how that works. This means that that having a breakdown and recovering from it means you lose half the character's HP stat overall. Yep. All allies also reduce their stress, and you gain some ego points when you fully break down a character. But yeah. Once the character recovers from breakdown, the number of breakdown cards you need to recover from the next breakdown goes up by 1. So originally 5, which means if you recover from breakdown, then the next breakdown you have would then be 6 for you to recover from the breakdown. Alright, so quickly just to give you a little look at some of the breakdowns here. This was in their developer commentary. I planned to make a video on this, but this is quickly just to show the breakdowns themselves. This is just some of the breakdowns for the characters. Obviously, yes, I get it. It's showing a lot, but just, this is kind of the main core system of the game. So I felt like, since they're putting a lot of time in the artwork and stuff, this is kind of like what they're, focusing on. But this is one of the characters. This is another one. Another one. There's another one. And yeah, so those are some of the breakdowns for the characters. Like I said, definitely some interesting artwork. Very cool, I guess you can say, like, theming-wise, right? Like, it's got, like, that kind of, like, they're just, like, freaking the fuck out. You know what I'm saying? But either way, very interesting stuff. And, there's a bunch of characters. And there's, I think they showed here some other... yeah, like this might be a breakdown, or potentially like a skill card. We're not sure. That could be easily a breakdown right there. Another potential breakdown, another breakdown. But yeah, obviously, like I said, they know their market. But either way, let's get back to the article. All right, so that's gonna be the battle gameplay section. This section is gonna be broken up into probably like two, at most three sections, but I would hope two, um, just so we don't break up the battle part too much. But uh, the next section is mostly going to be about, I guess, like the card part, in terms of like building your deck and like increasing your deck size and like the cards that are in it, and also the save data, which is personally my most concerning part about the game. Um, but I trust and hope that it goes well. Obviously, once the kind of closed beta stuff starts to go global, we can start to get a little bit more of like an easier, translations and things like that. But for right now, obviously, it's in I believe it's the Korean closed beta, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so yeah, it's the Korean one. Either way, this is gonna be the end of part 3 of the everything you need to know before launch. Everything here I loved. This is just typical battle stuff. Like, I think it's cool. The card system, and it's got standard like attributes and skill, attack. Those kind of things. The thing that's really cool in my eyes is that kind of stress system. It could be really cool, could be really bad. I don't know, but I'm interested. So that's kind of the good thing about it, is that I'm kind of intrigued by that whole system. The breakdowns are cool. As I showed, obviously they got that Korean, you know, spicy flair to them, but I think the system is cool. Like, I like the fact that like your team kind of has like you have stress individually, but then like when your teammate goes into a stress breakdown, then it kind of like penalizes your team, but then if you can recover from it, then it like benefits your team kind of in a way. So I think it's pretty sick. But either way, let me know what you guys thought in the comment section below. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and a sub would be greatly appreciated, and it would let me know, if I'm reaching a different audience, and if this is what you guys want to see. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay cool, stay safe. Peace out.